So good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a few moments. I would ask all our panelists to stop your video until we have you coming on, because we have a sign language interpreter that needs to have the screen present. So thank you so much. And I see Dr. Stewart connecting, and we really appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'd like to welcome our guests today, and thank you very much for joining us. I would like to introduce our executive director that we just hired on a permanent basis for NEA-New Mexico, and that is Dr. Earl Wyman. So we want to thank him for all of his hard work and the staff for helping us get this webinar together today. And we do have a sign language interpreter for the hearing impaired this afternoon. We are also broadcasting live on Facebook. For the link, it's in the chat box. So my name is Mary Parr Sanchez, and I am the president of NEA-New Mexico. I have the honor of representing you in Santa Fe. I want to tell all the educators and students on the line that we wish you all the best in this start of school, beginning of the year, and we hope that we can answer a lot of your questions today. And so let's go ahead and get started. So we will have some students in just a little bit ask Dr. Dr. Ryan Stewart, I'm so sorry. It's been a long day, and I know it's been a long day for the secretary too, because all of the days have been long. And I want to start off by thanking Dr. Stewart and Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham for their dedication, really, and their sincerity in having their number one priority be, with school reopening, to keep educators and students safe. And I have heard Dr. Stewart and the governor say it and live it for many months now. And I have no doubt in my heart that they are very sincere in their desire that that is the first ground rule for school reopening, is the safe reintegration of students and staff. So we are going to be putting the PED requirements in the chat box as well. And any questions that you put into the chat box that we're not able to get to today, we will get the answers to them, and we will post them to our website. And I wanted to give a quick update on the virus today, and the news is actually very good. So for the 7-day rolling average, it is down to 174, which is quite a bit lower than it was those really high days in July. So the reason we're all here is to find out, though, what educators are the most interested in, and that is the safe and judicious return to school. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Ryan Stewart, who is in New Mexico, and I never missed him from being in New Mexico, because he has always been available morning, noon, and night, and I know because I have called him all of those times, and he is very responsive to working teachers and bus drivers and food service folks. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stewart. And Dr. Stewart, I hope that you can speak with our folks for about 25 minutes, and then I'd like to turn it over to some students to ask you some questions, if that would be all right.
That would be more than all right, Mary. And if I can, I'll try to be even more brief than 20 or 25 minutes. I try not to be too long-winded, and getting to talk to students and hear from them directly is the best part of the job. So hopefully I can make sure that we have plenty of time to do that. So I just want to thank you, and again, thank you always to NEA-New Mexico for being such a good partner in this work. And I know that this is the hardest year professionally and personally, I think, for most of us that we've ever faced before, and hopefully that we'll ever face again. And so when we talk about the long days and the hard decisions and everything that goes into the difficulty that is trying to get ready for this most unprecedented school year, that the days are very long. And so the morning, noon, and night calls, we know that all of it's necessary to make sure that we've got everything in place we need to bring everybody back. So one thing I just want to say as we go forward, this particular virus and the impact that it's had on our state, on our nation, on schools, economy, everything, it really has created what I've experienced to be just this perfect storm of conditions and they're all fundamentally challenging what we know school to be traditionally, challenging how we get to engage with students and where and when we get to engage with students, and the very fundamental ways that we build relationships with our kids, that we signal the respect, the joy, the love that we have for our students. All of it gets wrapped up into the effect that this virus has. And above and beyond just those, like the physical aspects of it, the health aspects of it, one of the things that I found most striking about this particular virus and pandemic is the way in which it not only affects our mental and physical health, but the way it affects our social health and interactions in the system. And I think as educators, we are really feeling this very acutely, because the way it's affected schools, the way it has blown up in the national debate, the way it's become so polarizing and really started to pit different constituency groups against each other. I found that to be one of the hardest parts of being able to navigate through this pandemic, because I find that you've got so many people who all want to do the right thing and who all have the best motivations at heart and who want nothing but healthy kids, healthy adults, healthy families, strong schools, strong academics, rigorous programs, the ability to make sure that our kids are well cared for. And the ways that we're able to do it are just they run into each other, and in so many cases they're almost diametrically opposed. And it's not like you can it's not like how it is in the movies, where there's a clear hero and there's a clear villain, and you know who to root for, you know who to root against, and you know when the motivations are bad, and you kind of hear the troubling music in the background, and you know, oh, that's when the bad guys come in. There are in this situation just really, really good people trying to do the right thing amid circumstances that are ever changing, that are and where decisions really affect the health and safety and can be life and death. And so I think that is where I sit as an educational leader, policy leader, having to make some of these really, really tough decisions about what we're doing, where the answers, there are no good answers. There's just different shades of very, very tough answers. And so as we've navigated through that pandemic, we really have to keep as our North Star, as like Mary said, and I like to repeat, and the governor likes to repeat often, this notion of number one priority, let's prioritize the health and safety of our students, of our staff, of our community members, of our families, to make sure that we can contain this virus, that we can stop the spread, and that we can, as quickly and safely as we can, get back to what we know to be a normal sense of our society. And so as we've gone through this pandemic, that has been, it's written down in our reentry guidance, kind of front and center. Number one, prioritize health and safety. and we'll continue to live by that mantra. Number two has been, we know that our kids are best served by a loving, caring, high quality, supported teacher in the classroom in-person instruction. And so we know that while online learning may be and remote learning may be what we have to do in response to a pandemic, that's not the way as teachers we prefer to have to operate at all times. That's not the way we think our students learn best. We know that so much learning is built on the relationships that you have and the ability to make those connections in person, which can't be easily replicated online. And we know that as we balance these tensions of trying to manage those, we have to be driven by science and data and what the public health officials are telling us is safe or is not safe, and really use that as the lever to make decisions. So as we've gone through the pandemic, that's meant we've had to make some really tough choices. We had to close schools, and we took very proactive and early action when we saw cases start to emerge here in New Mexico to close school buildings and move to remote learning. And we know that we had to stay in that beyond the 2 weeks beyond the 3-week initial period, all the way through the end of the school year. And we know that as we've seen the virus both wax and wane here in New Mexico, we're still at a point where we haven't yet gotten to the place where we know that the virus levels are low enough to start bringing kids back in person. Now, as Mary mentioned, we're very excited about the work that New Mexicans are doing every day right now to make sure that we're following those safety guidelines, social distancing, staying home, wearing masks, and all of those things collectively across the state are bringing our case rates down. So we're in a much better position with regard to new daily case rates per capita than many of our neighboring states and many states across the country. And that's a real testament both to the commitment of New Mexicans, to the commitment of the administration to keep that health and safety number one, even when it's very, very hard, even when it doesn't win us many fans. It certainly doesn't win me a lot of fans, or win the governor a lot of fans when we have to make those really tough calls. But we can be very proud of the fact that we're saving lives by doing it. And because we had to make some of those tough calls, there are still people alive today who otherwise wouldn't be. So when we go forward and think about where are we going with the schools, we continue to rely on that scientific data. We continue to take very deliberate measures to think about how we'll approach this, so that as we start to bring students back in and bring them back in smartly and bring our staff members back in smartly, the act of doing that doesn't precipitate a rise in cases across the state. And so that meant taking the very tough action to say, we're not ready yet in August. We need to delay. We need to continue to watch where this virus is going and make sure that we get the case rates down to a number where we can feel safe and comfortable starting to slowly phase students back in. And we had to make the very tough decision to enact some pretty strict safety protocols about how schools will need to operate until we get to the point where we have a vaccine that has been widely distributed and taken, and we can move past the day-to-day struggles of coronavirus. And so while I certainly am not one who would have ever thought that we'd be in a situation where we have to keep our kids socially distant and apart, that we can't come together in groups and for the kinds of activities that we normally would. That really is a necessary precaution that we have to take in order to make sure that we can look students in the eye, look families in the eye, look staff members in the eye and say, it's safe to come back. And we can do this in a way that doesn't contribute to a wide increase in the number of cases that we're seeing. So as we've put out our reentry guidance, and not all states have done this. And you've probably seen on the news that you have states all across the country where masks are optional, where the kinds of social distancing requirements are not in place, where you have schools that have started back when you have case rates per capita that have been extremely high and skyrocketing. And New Mexico's taken a very different approach to that. And I think at the end, when we look back at those decisions and we get to analyze it, we'll be able to proudly say those were tough decisions that wound up saving lives. So as we're getting closer and closer to the point where virus containment strategies are working, they're bringing those virus case rates down. We're closer to start being able to phase in our students, starting with our youngest students in the pre-K 5, and then when that's safe, bringing more middle school students and then bringing in the high school students. We are sticking by those safety requirements, and when we put those out there, I want to just assure everybody on this call that our requirements are requirements. They're not options. They're not nice to haves. They are requirements for being able to operate an in-person learning experience for all students. And so, if when we say that all students need to be, all people in the school buildings need to be wearing face coverings, again, that's not a suggestion. It is a requirement. And if and where we find that those requirements are systematically not being upheld, then the public education department and the rest of the apparatus of state government is absolutely willing to move forward to make sure that those requirements are met, or that we move back to practices where we go online. Similar to PPE, we have to provide adequate PPE for our students and staff, and we've invested tens of millions of dollars through the CARES Act. So most of that has been spent out through local districts who have secured PPE. The state government as well, in collaboration with our Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, and also in collaboration with a number of other agencies in the National Guard. We've been distributing PPE throughout the summer, mainly around for our and spring with our food service workers. We continue to purchase and get out supplemental PPE across the state for all staff as they're returning. And we've been working to try to secure other federal monies and monies from other sources to continue to supplement the amount of PPE. And so again, that's not an option. We have to do that. We have to be able to provide PPE for staff and students if we're going to have an in-person learning environment. So again, we take these very seriously. I know my team and I, whenever we've heard that there's a need or that there's a way that we can improve out in the field, we've been working directly with our charter school leaders and superintendents to make sure that we know where the needs are, that we know where there might be trouble spots, and that we're here to help. And I do have to say, for the most part, we've had great partnerships with our leaders, both across state government, our school system leaders, our superintendents, our charter school leaders, who really are, I just have to say, like so many others who are in leadership positions right now, really are in just some of the most hard, impossible jobs that we have in all of government and all of service right now, balancing these incredibly difficult circumstances of budget challenges and changes to how schools are able to operate, different parameters than what we've ever had to deal with before, taking on new kinds of responsibilities that have never been put on the shoulders of a superintendent or a charter school leader, like getting to know where all the PPE vendors are and having to figure out social distancing requirements and looking at journal articles about the efficacy of different types of masks. I mean, these are all new challenges. And I heard somebody say, and I'll steal this expression for here, we're all back to first-year teachers this year. Whether you're a teacher who's been in the profession for 20 years, this year is year one. Whether you're a superintendent or state leader or anybody else in the system, this is year one for so many of us, because we're having to learn how to do these things in new ways very quickly that we've never had to do. But I've been very proud of how so many leaders across the state have stepped up and really taken on these challenges and balanced these competing priorities. So we've had many conversations about, how do we make sure that we are really living up to what we're saying and putting our money where our mouth does and making sure that these requirements are met. So first and foremost, I think we've had agreement from the vast majority of our superintendents and our charter leaders that we're going to take the steps that are necessary to keep people safe. I think where we've run into challenges, we've been able to deal with them directly and honestly. And I know that we don't always have agreement on issues that are this polarizing, but we do know that these are requirements that we're certainly ready to enforce. One of the hard things, and this goes back to what I said earlier about the virus and the way it can be just so polarizing and difficult at this time, is as I read through some of the survey results and got to hear from educators where they are in terms of the reentry process and preparations for it and trepidations about it. One of the things that I think is that where we have a lot of work to do, both at the state level, at the district level, at the school level, is communicating out and really demonstrating beyond doubt to staff, students, communities, the readiness and the preparation that has gone in to be able to start to deliberately phase kids back in slowly and safely. I know from the findings that only a fraction of educators are at the position yet where they're ready to trust that their district has the kinds of PPE or will really step up to enforce the face covering requirements. And so that's an issue that we have to, as leaders, address head on and really put our money where our mouth is and demonstrate that we are in this to make sure that you are safe. We know that there is there's fear around I'm in a high risk category. Am I going to have the option to be able to teach online or have a alternative assignment to be able to conduct my work? And again, this is something that our systems weren't developed for, that we're having to do new for the first time and build and invent systems and problem solve through them. But again, we've made that a clear point that those staff who are in those CDC high risk categories, we have to do that. And it's just something that we're committed to. It creates incredible operational challenges for superintendents who are trying to both balance family needs who want to be online, families who want and need to be coming back in person, and be able to operationalize it. And so as we work through that, we've been trying to work collaboratively with our labor partners, with our superintendents, with our charter leaders to problem solve what is one of the most complex challenges that we've ever had to face. And I'll go back to what I say before in that I feel like we're in this danger zone of where the administrators and teachers and labor unions and parents and students all can be seen as having competing interests and working against each other. And so at this point, one of the biggest challenges that we have is being able to come together and figure out these complex challenges together in a way that doesn't divide us, because at the end of the day, we all want what's best for kids. We all want them to be safe and healthy. We all want our staffs and their families to be safe and healthy. We all want a strong environment, and pulling it off again in this environment is there are no easy answers, only tough decisions that have to get made by people with great intentions, all trying to figure out this pandemic together. So we are working at the Public Education Department to set up a portal so that if you are experiencing challenges or finding that you have a school or a district where these expectations aren't being met, you'll be able to let us know so that we can work with that school or that district to make sure that those requirements are adhered to, and where necessary, have to take those actions to make sure that they are enforced. So whatever those actions need to be, they are requirements, they're not negotiable, and if we find that we're not able to meet those safety requirements, then we can't bring our staff and students back into those buildings. We're also working very hard to make sure that we can safely bring back very small groups of our highest need students, those students who have disabilities, and our students who are in pre-K through third grade, to make sure that we're able to Again, not in large numbers, because we know we're not ready to bring back large numbers of kids yet, but in those small situations and very small groups where we can have maximum social distancing, where you can have lots of flexibility and options as to how you structure that, whether it's bringing your 5 groups of students outside, or having other ways where you're in large spaces and not coming together, but be able to provide those touch points and support so we don't lose contact with those most vulnerable students in our system. None of this is easy, but we're setting up that portal to make sure that we're going to have a systemized way to track and respond. We've also, in the interim, been working directly. Teachers have been reaching out to myself and other leadership team members. I read every single one of those emails. I try to respond to all of them, but I still have some in my inbox I haven't been able to get back to. So if you haven't heard back from me, I'm trying. The days are long, like Mary said. We have regular conversations with our labor partners to identify where we have issues and try to problem solve things productively together. We are very committed to not driving wedges between teachers and families, to not driving wedges between administrators and staff, but really trying to work collaboratively across what we know is an education system that requires everybody to be in it together to make this really difficult situation work. And so I'm very grateful for the partnership that we have, for the information that we get. We are trying very much to live our talk around health and safety is the #1 priority and being driven by data. We are trying very hard to make sure that we're able to maximize in-person learning where it's safe for kids in ways that have strong safety protocols behind them that are enforced. And we can only do it with the partnership of everybody who has a stake in this game, which is so many people who are really counting on us. So I was probably more long-winded than I said I was going to be, Mary. Sorry about that. I hope I left enough time for the conversations with our students.
Yes, no, you did. And I appreciate you talking about the pitfalls of dealing with the aftermath, and it's not even after because it's ongoing, but just trying to set up the structures and the systems that can deal with a lot of the situations like staff, and the process needed to be in place for staff if they need to apply for remote learning and those types of things. And we just weren't ready for that type of onslaught that we have had, and we are quickly, working to problem solve every day. We try to problem solve, and I know I try to keep it real with you, and I really believe in the people that I represent, and I've been around them for a long time, and there's a lot of heart and soul in New Mexico, educators, from the bus driver to the school nurse to again, the educational assistant, the secretary, through the leadership in the district. So with that, we're going to turn it over to our most important folks in the schools, and that is our students. And so we're going to start with Diego Nunez, and Diego is a high school student in Albuquerque, and so and he's also the son of Marco Nunez, who
That's yes.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi there. I'm Diego, as you just said. So I have a question for you, Ryan Stewart. So thank you for this opportunity, first and foremost, for letting me speak and ask a question. So anyway, as the Secretary of Education of New Mexico, what assurances can you give New Mexico students and educators that they will not suffer retaliation for speaking up about health and safety concerns? And furthermore, how can this be communicated to superintendents and school districts in New Mexico?
Thank you for the question, Diego, and thanks for being on tonight. Great to see you. Great to meet you. This is an important question because as we bring people back in this environment, the requirements that we spoke of again they have to be there so we don't see some of the same issues that we're seeing in other places across the country. And if they're not there, then we need to know about it, and then we need to be able to solve those problems very quickly. And anytime you have a perception where you'll be retaliated against for doing so, it stops us from being able to attend to important health needs. So like I said, we're working right now to stand up that portal where we can get information around where these things are happening, that it can be done anonymously. As we do that, one of the things I will urge everyone, if you find a need to go to that portal, is that the more that we understand with specifics and with evidence of some kind, and not having to rely on just kind of word of mouth or conversations, it certainly makes that process clearer and easier for us. So we want to make sure that everybody has the ability to let us know if their safety isn't being attended to, so we can both PED and our partner agencies across the state be able to respond. That being said, I do know that many of the principals that I've talked to, the charter school leaders I've talked to, the superintendents I've talked to, take this just as seriously as I do. That they absolutely have the health and safety of their communities at heart. They live in these communities, see people in the grocery stores, and so there is a lot of widespread commitment to making sure that people are being safe. But where the ball is being dropped, we have an obligation to respond quickly and make sure people are protected in that system. So hopefully that will be one way that can happen.
Thank you. And what a very charming young man Diego is, Marco. Good job on that. So our next question is from Edie, and she is a second grader, and unfortunately her mom had to rush her father to the hospital, and so she isn't with us today. So I'm going to ask her question, and she is going to be president of the United States someday. She's in second grade, and she wants to know, what are you going to do about testing kids this year? Don't you know that we are kids?
Well, I'm sorry that she couldn't be on here, but Madam Future President, thank you for that question. Mary, could I just clarify there? Is she talking about academic testing or coronavirus testing?
She's talking about academic testing because she is a very bright young girl, and I have heard her before talk about how she gets asked the same questions over and over and over in her testing, and she asks, why do I have to answer it? I've already given the answer.
Great. Thanks, Mary. Great question. And so when we look at the testing work, I mean, I'd separate it out from what we're trying to do with our more robust assessment approach, something that gets to a testing system in general that is more formative and can be used to drive academic decision-making and not only summative and punitive. But let me talk a little bit more about kind of the day-to-day on this. We've been in close conversation with the Department of Education, so the United States Department of Education, the one that reports to the president, and they set a lot of rules about what states have to do when it comes to taking a test. And we have to follow those rules, or else we won't have a lot of the money to pay for all these safety procedures that we need to do. So we have to follow those rules, and the way we understand it right now, based on guidance that we've been getting through our association, the Council of Chief State School Officers, there is not right now any relaxing of those rules from the Department of Education, and there's not yet an indication that they're going to relax. So we will still have to follow those rules unless they tell us that we can't. And so we will have our testing program with our new testing vendors, unless the situation changes like it did last year, and we're not able to administer a testing situation. So we're going to keep monitoring it, and we'll we'll know more as we get a lot closer to that date about how the year has progressed and what the spring looks like. But right now, all those rules are still in place that we will have to follow. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. I'll make sure maybe Ellie gets to hear the answer. And I'm going to make sure that everybody votes in the election, because I think that's what you said somewhere in there. Our next question comes from Tyler Huebner, and he is a middle school student. And I believe he's an 8th grader, which I think the secretary and I both have a little bit of expertise in this area. So Tyler, if you would unmute and ask your question, please.
Hi, I'm Tyler, and I have two questions. My first question is the Public Education Department going to provide safety equipment for all students and staff? And my second question is, and what is the guidance for those that refuse to follow the rules, including government officials like the sheriffs?
Brian, great to meet you. I do have a special affinity for 8th grade. First, before I answer your questions, are you taking algebra this year?
No.
Taking algebra next year?
Yeah.
All right, so I was an algebra teacher, and when you get there and you want to talk through quadratic equations and factoring and graphing linear equations, call me. And
Okay.
I miss getting to do that with students, so
Yeah.
I would be very happy. So to answer your question around safety equipment, so the answer is we have to have adequate PPE. Everyone has to have a mask. It's a requirement. We got $97 million from the federal government to give out to schools. Now, I know that in the last legislative session, some of that was kind of credited. That's a whole different story. But either way, a lot of that money has gone toward being able to purchase the kinds of masks that students will need. The guidance that we've given for all schools is kind of like a uniform policy. So, you have your uniform. A lot of times students and families will provide a uniform. If you need help to get a uniform, one will be ready and available for you. So the expectation is that everybody has one, whether they're bringing their own mask from home or the school is providing it for them. And in any case, there will be no circumstance where a student isn't allowed to provide that. We'll make sure as a public education department that you've got one, even if we have to provide some supplements to your school or to your district to make sure it's there. When you talk about the guidance for those refusing to follow the rules, so the number one thing and the most effective way that we get people to make sure they follow the rules is working directly with them to say, look, here's what's happening. These are some of the things that we need to make changes to make sure students are safe, staff are safe. What do you need from the public education department to help you get there? In very rare cases, there may be a situation where someone just says, not going to do it. And in those cases, we have to take a lot more tough enforcement actions, which could mean that you don't have the ability to bring kids back in person until these requirements are met. Generally speaking, like I said before, we've got a lot of very conscientious, concerned superintendents, principals, charter school leaders whose job it is to make sure you're safe and who take that responsibility really seriously. If we find that there's somebody who's not doing that, then we will certainly bring any actions we need to make sure that they do follow those rules.
Thank you.
Great to meet you, Brian. Don't tell anybody that I said 8th graders were the best.
So Brian's the papa and Tyler. Tyler is the 8th grader. And Tyler, if you need any help.
Oh, Tyler, I'm sorry, Tyler.
Separation of powers in the 3 branches of government of the Civil War, you can call me and I'm happy to help you. So the next question is from Brianna. And Brianna, so if you would go ahead and unmute yourself quadratic equations, that gave me a little bit of trauma just even hearing that term. So Brianna, go ahead and ask your question.
Good afternoon, Dr. Stewart. I wanted to thank you and Mary for giving me this opportunity to ask a question. My question is, how can the Public Education Department ensure that social distancing will happen in small classrooms and during passing periods?
Great. Thank you for the question, Brianna. Really nice to meet you as well. So in the way that we've set the rules for coming back, the number of kids that you can have in any particular room, it's based on how big your room is. So if you've got a room that normally fits 20, you have to be able to have 6 feet of social distance between everybody in that room. So if it normally seats 20, you might only be able to bring in 8 or 9 or however, it depends on how the room is laid out. And so kind of in all of those circumstances, if we find that there's if we're getting reports that there's, not the adherence to the social distancing requirements that are there in the public health order, then we would have to go in and say we can't have this many people in that room, and make sure that gets enforced. So that is something that we're going to take again very seriously, just like in the last question. And it's kind of the hallmark of the hybrid model that will be phasing in here when we get to here in the not too distant future as we bring case rates down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. Brian, you have lovely children also. I think I just like kids around that age group. So our next student is the daughter of Edie, and this is Monica. And Monica also has 2 questions to ask you. So Monica, if you would unmute yourself and show us where you are.
Thank you. Hello, Dr. Stewart. I have 2 questions for you. If someone gets sick in my school, what will they do? When in the classroom, how will we stay 6 feet apart from our teacher and friends?
Monica, those are great questions. Thank you for asking them. These are ones that we deal with a lot. So let me talk about your first question. If somebody gets sick in your school, what will they do? So the first thing that's going to happen is my partner over at the Department of Health and her team are going to be coming to your, are going to be calling your school, working with your principal. We're going to be calling your school, working with your principal to find that student, make sure that they get tested. And if they're tested and they test positive, make sure that they get to be home, have the kind of care that they need so that they can stay healthy and keep from infecting other people. Second thing that we're going to do is find all of the people who were around that student for who got in close contact with that student and make sure that they get tested and make sure that they get to stay home and be isolated so that they don't get people sick. And then we're going to make a decision about whether or not we need to close the school for any period of time. So it may be that we have to close the school, clean everything down, make sure that we've gotten the virus off of all the surfaces before people come back. And then keep a close eye to make sure that nobody who has symptoms is coming back, and that we've kept the outbreak contained. So it's pretty complex. There's a lot of moving parts to it, but you've got public education department, the health department, and a bunch of other people who are going to come and make sure that we take care of that student and anybody else who might have gotten sick. So then your second classroom was, how will you stay 6 feet apart from your teacher and friends? And this is where we're going to be counting on you a lot, Monica, to really follow the directions of your teachers really closely. Because you're not used to staying 6 feet apart from your friends, are you? It's not typically how you play. What's your favorite game to play with your friends?
Well, probably tag.
Probably tag. So this is going to be a year where we get to invent some new games where we try to stay a little bit further away from each other, use our imaginations in different ways. It's going to feel super weird because that's not how we typically operate. But that is something that we're going to need all of our teachers to really keep an eye on. You're going to be sitting 6 feet away. Your desk is going to be 6 feet away. When you eat lunch, you're going to be 6 feet away. And when you're playing, you and your friends are going to have to find some creative new ways to think about that. So you can help us stop the spread of the virus and make sure that we don't have to close your school, or close your classroom, or take any of those actions. Did I answer your questions?
Okay. Yes.
Thank you for coming on and asking them.
Thank you.
I'd have a hard time staying 6 feet away from you, Monica, if I was your teacher, but I would have to pinch myself and say, you don't want to get her sick, so stay away from her, but it would be hard. So our next student is Maria, and she is from Las Cruces, and she is the daughter of Steve. So Maria, would you unmute and ask your question, please?
Hi, my name is Maria Cianes, and I just have a question for you. Some of my friends are worried that they won't be able to afford a quality mask to wear once we return to school. The good ones are expensive. What will you do to make sure all kids have access to a quality mask once we return to school?
Great question here, Maria, and it kind of reminds me of the question that we had earlier, where we've had a lot of money that's gone out to the districts who have made purchases of their masks and other PPE for students and staff. We know that some students will be bringing their masks from home, which is perfectly acceptable. But in any case, it's the responsibility of the state to make sure that no kid is unable to go to school because they have a mask. I'm sorry, because they don't have a mask. So we've been working with our Homeland Security team. We've been working with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to secure more personal protective equipment. The governor's office has done a great job helping us to get more personal protective equipment. As we speak, we're getting it out all across the state to make sure that every single child has a mask. And if we find some situation where a school or district has run out, then we're going to make sure that we get it to them, no matter what we have to do to get it there. We've actually had people from my office driving all over the state with big boxes of masks to give them out to food service workers and so on. So we're taking that really seriously, and we're going to make sure everybody's got a mask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, and our last questions are going to come from Lauren and Jonah, and they are Andrew Lantoya's kids. So ask your question.
My favorite thing about school is music. And my favorite thing about school is PE. What could New Mexico's PED do to make online learning more about fun and less about taking tests?
Great questions. Wonderful to meet you both, Lauren and Jonah. And my favorite subject in school was probably PE too. So I was terrible at music, but I really liked PE. So I totally get where you're coming from. So when we're in the virtual setting and you don't get to be in the classroom like normal, PE is going to feel really different, because it's not going to be where you have, if you're in the virtual setting where you've got your teacher right in front of you who's taking you through the activities and showing you right there. You're going to have to do a lot through the computer, and you're going to have to be doing some exercises on your own. Now, that's going to feel a little bit weird, but a lot of it is going to be on how seriously you take it and make sure that you keep pushing yourself to do the exercises that you're assigned, to do the practicing that you're assigned from home, because your PE teacher, when it's online, isn't going to be standing right next to you to look at your technique. What's your sport of choice, Jonah?
Football.
Football?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So spring training is only a few months away. Hopefully, maybe we'll have a spring season. So that means you're going to be doing a lot of push-ups, a lot of running drills, a lot of practicing playing catch with your family at home, and that your PE teacher assigns. So it's going to feel different this year, but there's no reason why it can't still be fun and engaging. And when it comes to music, similar situation. Now, music is going to be tough because singing and playing instruments, you can spread the virus a lot further when you're singing and playing instruments, which is it adds a little bit more risk to it. So it might be weird when you get back to school that maybe you're going to have more music classes that take place outside, or maybe you're going to have to be in spaces that are really far spread apart. But there's still no reason why we can't enjoy music and have great music instruction. Everyone's just going to be adapting to a new way of doing it. So at home, you're going to have to do some of that practice. If you don't have your your music teacher who's standing there right by you and listening to you. But I know our fabulous PE teachers and music teachers have been doing a lot of learning about how those kinds of things can be done well online. And so so it's going to be up to all of us to try to adapt in this crazy new year. So I hope you can still really take advantage of those great subject areas and continue to work hard at them. I know you do when you're in school, so I know you can do it when you're out of school.
So thank you, Jonah.
Thank you,
and
guys.
Laura. And I hope the kids and the staff that have joined us today can see what I have seen and come to know about the secretary, and that is he means what he says, and he says what he means. And we are going to problem solve, and we're going to make it through this this challenging time. Our state has done so many things right. Our governor, and we can just look at the states around us to know that that lives have been saved, and I know that we're all going to work to continue to make sure that you kids can get back to school and be with your friends very soon and do the things that you love to do. Thank you, Dr. Stewart, for once again joining us today. These really help our members to get to see you and to hear you directly. I think it helps to allay some of their fears. I know we have a lot of questions in the chat box, and we're going to get the answers to those, and we'll post them on our website. I want everybody to know that if you're on the call today or the Zoom, we're going to be sending you a follow-up email, and we are going to be sending our survey out. We have taken 3 months of survey data from members around the state. Close to 3,000 members we've surveyed on your hopes and your dreams and your wishes for school reopening. And I have shared that with the secretary. We'll be sharing it with all of you shortly. We're going to mail it out tomorrow to all of our membership as well. So if you aren't a member with NEA-New Mexico yet, or if you would like to become a community ally member, please go to our website at nea-nm.org and join us. We're also going to be, I'm segueing to another Zoom kickoff for somebody who wants to be the next senator from District 35, Naomi Martinez Parra. So if any of you can join us with Naomi, please do so. We'll put the link in the chat. And thank you so much. Dr. Stewart, do you have any closing remarks?
Just want to thank you again. Thank you both, Mary. Congratulations, Earl, again on your permanent appointment. Look forward to continuing to collaborate with you. I want to thank all the educators who you guys are going through I'll just keep saying, I mean, the most unprecedented trying year, and doing just doing amazing work to balance what I know are just really, really tough, difficult choices. And the only way we get through this is to come together to figure out how do we prioritize safety and provide for our kids together. So no easy answers, but we're here with you, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that this year is a safe, healthy, productive one for you.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart. We'll talk to you soon. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today, especially you young folks. It's good to see all of you. I miss being around kids because they're more fun than adults any day. So thank you, and we will see you later. Join us on our next Zoom. Thanks.